Welcome everybody and thank you for joining me. My name's Wyn Hopkins and I'm going to run you through some of the tips I've learnt over the last 20 years of using Excel. This is going to be pretty rapid fire. This will be recorded, we'll make it available, so don't worry if you miss something, you can come back and grab it again. So let's get underway. Quick little background on myself. I am an Excel MVP. You can find me on Twitter and you can find me on LinkedIn. We've got a YouTube Access Analytic channel, an Access Analytic blog. I'm based here in Perth, Western Australia, and it's famous for its Cottesloe sunsets, Rottnest Island, and the cute quokkas. That's enough about me. On with the show. So, merging and hiding. We're going to start off simple, build up some tips. Some of these tips you'll know, some you'll not know. Even after 20 years, I'm still learning new things all the time. So merging cells. Let's just get this out the way. Merging the cells is devil's work. Okay, it is a terrible thing to do and you should avoid it at all costs. So let's just explain that for those of you who don't know about merging and the hassle it can cause. Let's just highlight this. I want January to be centered across the top there. So I'm going to go to my Home tab and click Merge and Center. And there it is, beautifully lined up. And I'll do the same thing here. Now I could go and click Merge and Center, but my hand's next to my keyboard. So I'm going to press F4 to repeat my last action. So here I go, F4, also merges and centers. Repeats the last thing I did. That's great, looks nice, but if I want to highlight just the units and I drag down, it highlights everything. If I just want to do costs and I drag, it highlights everything. And if you want to copy and paste this somewhere else, sometimes you get this merge cells warning, cannot paste. It's horrible. So what do? Well, let's Control Z a couple of times just to undo. The better option is a thing called Center Across Selection. Now, unfortunately, it's not one of these options. So what you have to do is highlight where you want to center across and then either Control 1 or right click Format Cells. And the option you want here is Alignment. And the alignment option is the horizontal and you want to center across the selection. So horizontal, center across selection. Okay, beautiful. And the main difference is this. These are individual cells. Awesome. So I can grab that. I can right click on my paintbrush and just click here, and there it's centered across selection as well. And I can highlight columns. It's a beautiful thing. Please use center across selection. Wouldn't it be nice if it was one of the options up here built in? Mr. Excel, Bill Jelen agrees. He's got this post here, add center across selection to this little drop down. Please go to this site. Like I say, this file will be made available to you, and go and vote. Excel user voice, add center across selection. And just to prove it is the devil's work, there we go. Just the other day, 666 votes. Please go vote. Right, fills and formats. Let's get into this. So let me zoom in a bit so you guys can see. So if I want to fill a number, I could type in 2, 3, 4, but I actually just want to do a little list. What I see people doing is put a 2 in there and you highlight, and probably for 6 or 7 years that's what I did, and you fill down and you get a nice run. However, there's a more efficient way. You just put the 1 in, then you grab the corner, you start dragging down and you hold Control. That's the trick. Hold Control and the numbers increment. Perfect. Then to get January to spill down, because it's right next to here, all I have to do is double click on the corner and down it goes. Beautiful. If I want to extract the short month, I could type in Jan, and to be honest, I could just double click and it would fill down. However, maybe I want lowercase Jan and then lowercase Feb, and notice as I type that word Feb, it recognizes a pattern. This is called flash fill. And if I press enter, it extracts it all. Now this doesn't just work with months, it would work with people's names, etc. Anything you want to do. Capitalize, uppercase, lowercase, all sorts of crazy stuff. So flash fill, and let me just show you this for a second. Let's say I want to get the second 2 letters and ebb. Okay, and then I realize that I pressed enter and it's gone. Control E. Okay, that grabs the second 2 letters from every word. Now, how am I going to remember that? Well, under the Home tab, there is a Fill button, and you can flash fill. And if you hover over it, Control E is the shortcut for flash fill. Okay, and I'm just in the file here, flash fill, Control E. Right, next one, today's date. So you can put the formula equals today, and that will put today's date, and that is live. Every day that day will change. So that's one option, but I wanted to lock in a date. So for about 10 years, I used to Control C, right click, paste values to turn it into a date. And then somebody said, well, why don't you just do Control semicolon? Control semicolon? Oh, it puts today's date in a cell. Beautiful. Right, now I want to fill this down all the way to the bottom for maybe up until the 31st of December. So I could drag this down, which would increment, but it's a bit laborious. Here's a little trick. Right click, not left click, right click on the corner, drag down, drag up. How anybody's meant to discover that, I do not know, but you go to Series at the bottom, and in this column, I want to do dates by day, going up one day at a time and stopping at 31st of December 2020. Click OK, and there's my list all the way down. And if I want to jump to the bottom, Control down. If I want to jump to the top, Control up arrow. Okay, all good. So here we go, formatting. I want this to be formatted to my formatting of choice. I want to show the name of the day of the week, the actual name of the month. So here we are, right click, format cells, or again, Control 1 if you're a keyboard person, number, custom, wipe out whatever's in the box. And here we go. The more D's you put, the more detail you get. So actually, I will put it in brackets, DDD. You can add brackets and dashes and all sorts. DD, 25th, MM for 12, another M for December. If you want 4 M's for the full word, YY, and that'll do. And I click OK. Actually, let's put another Y in there for good measure. Click OK, and there's my formatted date. Notice in my formula bar, it's still the 25th of December, but my formatted date is like that. And if I put today's date in here, but Control semicolon, the date doesn't quite fit, so you double click on the column, and there you are, it's Tuesday. Number formatting, similar sort of idea. Highlight what you want. I want my negatives to turn red and have brackets around them. I want my zeros to have a dash, my positives to be separated by thousands. So right click, format cells, custom, wipe out the word general or whatever else is in there. And this is the option here. Sorry if it's a bit small, hash, comma, hash, hash 0. That's how I want my positives. Semicolon, that tells Excel you want to do your negatives next. So I want them to turn red. So I do red in square brackets next to the letter P on the keyboard. Open the round bracket, hash, comma, hash, hash 0. If you wanted decimals, you could do 0.00, etc., but I don't want to do those. Semicolon. And then for zeros, I want to show a dash. And you can click OK. And there we go. Beautiful. But if you notice, 1, 2, 3, 4, my numbers don't quite line up because my negatives have been pushed across by that last red bracket. So for those of you who want perfection, right click on those cells again, format cells, custom, and we want to change how our positive is formatted with an underscore close bracket. That puts an invisible close bracket to the right of your positive numbers. And when I click OK, watch the magic happen. There we go. Everything lines up perfectly. So if I jump back in there, it's the underscore, and I zoom in, let me see if this will work. It's the underscore that actually makes it invisible. Right, we're on to the next one. Paintbrush. Let me just delete this to show you a random list of numbers. There we go. This is actually using the new sequence function, or rand array function, sorry. But we don't have time for that today. That's a whole nother topic for somebody else to present on. I just want to format these numbers. So I'm going to grab this one, right click. No one tells you you can double click the format painter. So double click locks that formatting. So I can happily click over and over again, highlight ranges, do rows, click, click, double click the Format Painter brush, either this one or on the Home tab, this one, you can double click that as well. Okay, it is awesome. It even says in the instructions now to apply the formatting. Here we go. Let's see if I can zoom in. I can't on this screen zoomer, but if I hover over this, you will see it actually says double click the Format Painter. Awesome. FYI at the bottom. Right, last little one. Bullet points. Now, there is a little trick for a bullet point. If you have a number pad on your keyboard, a separate number pad, you can hold Alt and press the number 7 and it'll put a bullet point in. However, they're just the numbers across the top of your keyboard, like on laptops, that does not work. So to put a bullet point in, one option I like to do is comma, comma, space. It will auto-correct my comma, comma and turn it into a bullet point. So here's how we do it. We insert a symbol and we go and find a bullet point. Normally under geometric shapes is where I go, and you find something that looks good and you insert and close. Then you highlight that, Control C, press Escape. So Control C to copy. Just check by doing a few Control V's. Yeah, there we are, it's working. So now the trick. You go into File, Options down the bottom left here, up to Proofing, and here's your magic autocorrect. Click on there, in the Replace box, comma, comma, in the With box, Control V. That's now my bullet point. If you've ever typed bracket C bracket and it's turned it to a copyright symbol, you can delete that. You can even sneak on your colleague's computer and replace the word the with idiot. Okay, please don't do that, but you can. And be warned, this is now office-wide, so it will affect your Word documents, your PowerPoint, your Outlook. So try not to do that, right? I didn't tell you to do that. So let's just delete that one. Let's just make sure that my comma, comma, and my full stop is there. Click Add, and we are good. So now when I go back here, and I come into here and do comma, comma, space, it puts a bullet point in. It's a bit of a big one. I could do a smaller one. So new line, Alt and Enter starts a new line in the same cell, comma, comma, new line, press Enter, and there's 2 lines in the same cell with bullet points. I even do the same thing for $, space turns into a pound sign, and you may have come across this before, my little trick, I, space, actually creates an entire index match formula for me. That's one for another day. Excellent. There's the little settings, proofing, autocorrect. Okay, so into copy paste values. Something as simple as copy paste values. Why do we need it? Well, if we copy this formula, which is the sum of those 2 cells, and we paste it over here, then the formula comes along, it's looking at that spot, it's yellow, maybe I just want the number. So what you normally do is Control C, right click with your mouse, and then here's the values button. Beautiful, okay? Now, if you'd rather, there is a couple of different options using your keyboard and not using your mouse. Because Control C, you're using your keyboard, and Control V, you're using your keyboard. So it would be nice if there was a keyboard option. Well, there is. There is a right click button on many keyboards these days. Here's mine, that's exactly what it looks like. So what I can do is Control C, arrow across to where I want to paste, press the right click button on my keyboard. Here we go. That's the right click button. And the shortcut is V, or if I want to do formulas, it's F. So here I go, press the letter V, and that is pasted values. Beautiful. And if you haven't got a right click, it's not all lost. Here's a final little trick. Control C, go across, Control V. That is not what I want. Here's the magic. See that little control symbol, this showing up here? Well, if I tap the Control key and then tap V, it pastes values. So it's a Control double V. So Control C, Control V, then tap Control, tap V, and you've got paste values. Excellent. Okay, shapes. Let's talk about shapes. Insert a shape, we click a circle, and then we start drawing, and then we spend 10 minutes trying to make it the right shape, okay, make it a perfect circle. Okay, so there's a couple of different ways of doing this. Firstly, when you insert a shape, you can hold Control and click that shape, and it just drops in as a perfect circle. Then how do I keep it as a perfect circle? Well, whenever you're resizing it, hold Shift. Then it stays as a perfect circle, right? Holding the Shift key. So that's a little trick. Or if you want it to get bigger from the middle out, hold Control and Shift and drag, and there we go. Okay. What if you want to draw lots of shapes? So rapid fire shapes, insert shape. I want to draw a whole bunch of squares for some reason. Okay. Right click, lock drawing mode. There we go. Click. And then I want to do that shape, and that shape. Okay, rapid fire, press escape when you're done. If I want to snap these to the corner of these cells, I'm moving it, I press Alt, and it snaps into the grid. Okay, moving it, Alt, moving it, Alt. Okay, Alt snap cells. And if I'm dragging stuff around, I'm making a copy, for example, of a chart or a shape, then I hold Control, I start dragging, that makes a copy. Okay, Control drag, and I want it to line up. Watch what happens when I press the Shift key. It snaps into line, and I cannot shift it left or right. Okay, I'm waggling my mouse around, it will not move. So that trick again, hold Control, start dragging your shape, and then hold Shift, and you cannot move it out of line. It stays in line perfectly. I'll go for the trifecta, Control Alt Shift. There we go, snapped and in line. Beautiful. Okay, last little one, inked shape. If you have the draw tab showing, so right click, customize the ribbon and make sure that draw is turned on. Okay, then under the draw tab, you've got the ability to do sort of freehand drawing. Yeah, I can do a nice little smiley face. You're looking down that way. Okay, but ink to shape can be quite cool. So if I do a pretty approximate version of a circle, I should hopefully get a circle. If I do a pretty bad version of a square, I should get a square. Oh, it doesn't quite line up. Ah, there we go, I filled it in. And if we do a hexagon, my hexagons are shocking. This will be impressive if Excel gets this right. Drum roll. Yes, a hexagon. Octagons are for another day. And I can even do ink replay, so it'll draw my little face again for me. Excel's so cool, you've got to love it. Okay, let's get into some serious stuff. Tables. Every Excel file needs a table in my view, right? It needs tables. And what do I mean? I mean tables with a capital T. So there's a couple of ways of turning this into a proper formatted table. So under the Home tab, there is a button Format as Table, so I could highlight my data and format it as a table. Under the Insert tab, there's a button called Table, so that's two ways of doing it. My favorite is the little shortcut that pops up there, Control T. Nice and easy to remember, T for table. So Control T highlights everything. I didn't have to highlight everything to start with, it grabs everything, as long as there is no totally blank columns or totally blank rows. If there are, then you have to manually highlight everything first and then press Control T. It's worked out that my table has headers, which it does, my city, my gender, my given name, and we are good. So first of all, tables are pretty, right? They make stuff easier to read potentially. You can pick a different color if you like. You can have alternating rows like this, okay? And just for something, right click, insert a row, the formatting changes automatically, so you don't have to reformat the rows. Perfect. However, that's just sort of small potatoes. What tables are really good at are other things. For example, if I wanted to go down this column, okay, Control, Shift, down arrow key, I hit a gap. Control, Shift, down arrow key. I'm trying to highlight this entire column. Control, Shift, down arrow key. Okay, it's not a great experience. So two ways of doing this in a table. My favorite, Control, Spacebar. It just grabs everything. Doesn't matter how many gaps you've got everything. Control Spacebar a second time, grabs the heading. Look, if you're already in the heading and you press Control Spacebar, it grabs everything. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Okay. Alternatively, if you don't want to touch the keyboard, you can just hover your mouse, you get a downward pointing arrow, click that, it highlights everything. Click a second time, it grabs the heading. Okay. Shift spacebar highlights a row. If you've got a few rows highlighted, shift spacebar highlights a few of them. If you've got a few columns, Control Spacebar highlights a few of them. You know, that is just good stuff. Control A for all, highlights all. Control A a second time will grab the heading. There's a little trick, Control full stop. What does that do? Control period, okay? That cycles around the four corners of your table. So Control full stop moves my cursor to the top left, okay? It's now in D4. Next click, I'll push it up to P4, so Control full stop, there it is. And if I want to drop down the bottom, click it again. So Control full stop is a quick way to get to the bottom of your table. So Control full stop 3 times, 1, 2, 3, I'm at the bottom. Beautiful, okay? 1, 2, I'm back at the top. So it's a real nice way of doing that. And if you've got a whole column selected, for example, and you want to go Control full stop, you jump to the bottom, Control full stop, you jump to the top. And a little known feature is that you don't have to use Control down arrow or Control up arrow to navigate around. You can actually double click on the edge of a cell. Watch this, I'll double click on the edge at the bottom, it jumps to the bottom. I'll double click on the edge to the right, it jumps to the right. Double click on the edge to the top, it jumps to the top. So double click, edge of cell navigation, awesome. Right, we're in a table, design, tools, where we can summarize our pivot tables, remove duplicates, all sorts of cool stuff. Let's insert a slicer and we'll do it by blood type. Click OK, there's my slicer. Let's make it 4 columns wide, make it a little bit wider. And if I click on AB negatives, I get the 1 person, O negatives, the 4 people, and so on. Slicers, little filters for tables, really obvious when you've got filters on as well. You can have multiple slicers for multiple columns. You can add as many as you want. Slicers are pretty cool. Okay, but the real power of tables is the autofill feature, right? That's the real gem of this stuff. So if I go equals and I click on kilograms times 10, okay, watch what happens. Oop, times 10, press enter, it fills down automatically. Every formula is kilograms times 10, and the @ symbol just means this row. So the kilograms column, this row. Really nice formulas in tables. And if I make a change to any of these, to maybe times 1,000, you see how every single formula changes, and that is critical for building good, robust spreadsheets. One last tip on tables. Sometimes when you highlight them and you say Control T, if they're all text, the table function does not realize that there is a header, and sometimes you forget. You know, you can always tick that if you spot it. You can press Alt M if you want to highlight the M. But there's a little trick. Make the header bold, Control B. Then Control T, and it recognizes that the header is something different to the rest of it, and you click OK. Happy days. Right. Surely the greatest thing to ever happen to Excel was Power Query. Right? I love Power Query. Everybody should know about Power Query. It is the world's best washing machine for dirty data. All right? It is awesome. And if you're wondering how I get these visuals to pop up, you simply right click and create a note. And then once you've created the note, you say edit the note. So you click on the note, click on the edge of it up here, format the comment, and under colors and lines, you can pick a color, you say fill effects, and you pick picture and select the picture. And you can drop a picture into a comment. Okay, so there you go. That's how you do it. Right, so let me hide that comment or that note. Okay, Power Query, let's get into it. A couple of simple examples. I could spend all day on Power Query. Here's a little list of email addresses. I want to convert it into a nice table with the person's name and their company and their email address. So here we go. Under the Data tab, this little section here, this is Power Query. So from table range, but you can also go off and get data from other places. You know, you can tap into files and folders and databases and all sorts of places to get your data from. I'm going to get it from inside this file. So from table range, my table doesn't have a header this time. Okay, and here we go. It's now going to spin open Power Query Editor. This is it. This is the Power Query Editor. Really, if you're not using Power Query, you're missing out massively. It can save you so much time. Here's the trick. I'm going to right click on this column. I'm going to split the column by a delimiter. And the delimiter I want is a little semicolon between each email address. Sometimes Power Query guesses right. This time it didn't. I put a full stop because there's also a full stop between each name. This is the clever bit. Advanced option, split it into rows. So at each separator, it'll create a new row. Beautiful. Okay, so this is now my email address. Next one, I want to extract the word testing, made up, sample, the name. So I'm going to go right click, add column from examples. And there's multiple ways of doing this, but I'm just going to type in test.ting, enter. And it's extracted them all just by giving an example. Text before delimiter, email address. Yeah, so check out that little element there at the top. So I can click here and I can just highlight that formula. Always read that formula, okay? It's important to know. And check this out. If I want it to be capitals, I can just come over here, test.ting, and there we have it. It's actually capitalized it as well, and it's put a text.proper at the top. Awesome. So that's my name, and click OK. I want to split this apart. So look, in this case, I will just use normal split. So split column by delimiter. I could use column from examples as well. Using the full stop, each occurrence, that'll do. Okay. So there we have first name and surname. So here we go. Let's just change this to first name, change this to surname. Perfect. And maybe I want to extract the company, so I could do the same sort of thing. I won't bother doing that now. And here's my cleaned up data. Ooh. Awesome. And now I can load it. So close and load to. Where do I want to load it to? Well, I'll load it to a table on an existing worksheet just here. Click OK. And now here's my nice table, automatically formatted. Okay, there's a little query window. You can move this around. You can move it over to the right if you want. You can move it to the left, wherever you prefer. Okay, and this is refreshable. So if I ever put something new in here, so let me go, let's call this, I don't know, jesting. Okay, right click this table, refresh, and there we go, jesting. Okay, all good. Right, and we can even use Power Query to go off to a website and grab us some exchange rates. Let's give this a go. So I'm going to go into here. I'm going to grab this little URL and go data from web and paste the URL in. Oh, I just didn't quite copy it. So here we go, Control C from web and Control V. Okay, so off we go. It jumps off to that website. This is the Royal Bank of Australia exchange rates. There is a page here called Units of Foreign Currency. You can even have a web view, so you can see the actual web page. Okay, that's the table view. So I'm going to right click and transform this because I only want the latest exchange rate. Okay, so I'm going to just refresh this to make sure I've got the latest one here. And I don't want that little step. Okay, so here's my exchange rates. Let me just refresh that again. Beautiful. So the latest is the 12th of May. Now I don't want to keep that column because next time I want a different date. So what I'm going to do is this. This column is my currency. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to right click, and the best feature ever in Power Query, maybe the whole of Excel, unpivot other columns. Watch this, it's going to flip the dates around into its own column. Beautiful. There's my dates. There's my value for each currency. Perfect. So I'm just going to change this to the word date and then change this to a date. and I can change this to rate and change this to a decimal number. And I only want the latest. So because this is a date column, you've got special date filters, and one of the date filters is latest. Click on that and I'll always have the latest date. Then I can right click and remove that column because I don't want it. And there I'm good to go. I can rename this latest FX. Close and load, load to, and here I'll load it into a table in an existing worksheet just here. Click OK. And then each day I could come in and refresh this. I can even set it to refresh on open. Sometimes a second refresh makes it load. Is it going to work today? Or is it being, yes, finally it does. And every day I could just right click and refresh. Okay. So I don't need this queries and connections pane anymore. Let's talk about hyperlink. Hyperlink, really useful for helping navigate around a spreadsheet. So there is a built-in, just simple hyperlink. So let's say I want to link to, I don't know, something on this Power Query page. Let's have a look, what have we got here? Let's say I want to link to this little table, this little currency thing. So that's cell L14. So I can happily go right click, link, and place in this document, go to the Power Query page and type in L14. Okay, a better option is to actually define a name that you want to link to and link to that. But you can do this way, click OK, click on the link, and it'll jump you there. Little tip, if you want to jump back, press F5 and then enter. So F5 enter jumps you back to wherever you came from after clicking a hyperlink. But unfortunately, that hyperlink is hard-coded. So if I insert some rows, and I've got a little insert button on my toolbar here. By the way, if you want to add something to your toolbar, you go to Home, you click on the button you want to add, right-click, Add to Toolbar. Okay, that's the quick way. So if I want to jump to this now, I've inserted some rows. I'm still going to that L14. It's not dynamic. So I want to make it dynamic. So a way of doing that is this. I need to get the cell address and then hyperlink to that. So equals cell address. Okay, and I'm going to go and grab this cell here, enter, and that's the full cell address. Okay, Power Query L16, that's dynamic. So if I insert rows, that is a formula, it'll change. Then how to hyperlink, there's a function called hyperlink. Okay, equals hyperlink. Okay, and it won't work on its own. You have to put a hash ampersand. So that's basically joining a hash onto the front of it, which is an internal reference. Okay, and then at the end of your hyperlink formula, you could put something like go to FX table. Okay, so that's the friendly name it's referred to as. If you look at the syntax, link location, friendly name. That's the syntax for hyperlink. Okay, I press enter, and now I click on go to FX table, and it jumps me there. And it's dynamic. So if I insert a few rows, you know, that cell address formula will have changed. So if I click on this, I'm still going to the right spot, which makes really robust formulas and links. Okay, so the tip, F5 enter to jump back. You can also use name cells. You know, that's another way of doing it. So I've named this cell section 1. See, this cell is B19. This cell is called section 1. And all I've done is clicked on the cell and typed the word section 1 in that box. You know, this cell is called section 2, and so on. Then I've got a little drop-down box, which I'll talk about later. So section 2, and I've got a little formula in here that says, and let me just open this up, hyperlink, there's the little hash, and C16, so it'll actually jump to there. So go to section 2. And then this cell here, if I press F2, is a hyperlink hash cell address back to here. Now we probably could have named this the drop down or something like that, rather than having this whole cell address thing in there, but it's a nice quick way of doing it. So navigating using a little drop down, really good for long P&Ls and other sort of lists of data when you want to jump to a particular section. Okay. hyperlink and XLOOKUP. So for those of you who haven't got XLOOKUP yet, it'll be coming in July if you're on Office 365 or Microsoft 365. Let's just do a standard XLOOKUP. Actually, I'll do it just in this cell. Equals XLOOKUP, this value, comma, in this column of items, comma, and I want to bring back that result. No need to put zeros or anything like that. No counting columns. You just pick what you want. And there's a 20. And if I change this to 8001, I get 30. Okay, dead simple. XLOOKUP, awesome. But XLOOKUP actually returns a cell reference in the background. So I can actually do this. I can do cell, okay, and let me just little space here. Put spaces in your formulas as well to make them easier to read. Cell address of that cell that it finds, okay, the XLOOKUP. And there it is, it's K14, and if I change this to 7003, it's K13. There you go, this is cell K13. Awesome. And now I can take it a step further and I can hyperlink that. So, hyperlink. Don't forget the little hash, ampersand, okay? And I'll put a little friendly name at the end called jump. Okay. So now if I pick 1004 and say jump, it'll actually jump to the result for 1004. If I change this to 8001 and click jump, it'll jump to the result of the 30. And I can take it one step further. I could replace this whole XLOOKUP part. I can copy that. Okay, there's the whole XLOOKUP bit, just with the bracket on. Control C, replace the word jump with Control V. And now I've actually got a clickable result. So 50032 is 40. I can click on it and it'll jump there. Okay, that's pretty awesome. XLOOKUP and hyperlinks. And this would be a beautiful scenario for the let function. That's a topic for another day. Right, into traffic lights. Let's look at this. We have got negatives, zeros, and positives. I just want red traffic light, orange, or even no traffic light, green traffic light for positives. So people come in here, they go icon sets, traffic lights, awesome. You know, click on those. Brilliant, that works really well. Until you then put a positive 10 in here and your other positives go red and it leads to confusion and people just give up. Okay, so let me just undo and show you the best way of doing this. What you should do is conditional formatting, new rule. Okay, that's where you should start. Then under this option, you go icon sets. And here we see the built-in rules and they're not good. Okay, what it does is the top 33% of results go green, regardless if they're positive or negative. That's not what we want. So you change these to number, right? That's the sort of main first point you do. Then you want to say, okay, and I'll pick a couple of different, there's different options here. Let's go for this one. And you can say, okay, if it's greater than 0, I want it to have a green tick. Perfect. If it's equal to 0, and there is no equal to, so you have to pick the greater than or equal to, then let's not have an icon. Okay, we won't bother having one. And if it's less than 0, if it's a negative variance, whatever it might be, we'll have a red. And we'll go okay. And that works a treat. Okay, so if you have a 10, if you have a -5, perfect, works really well. And if you have a 0, it doesn't show an icon. And you can even highlight this and say manage rules, double click on the rule here, and you can say show the icon only. Apply, and then the actual number disappears as well. So you can have a really thin column with maybe that showing. Awesome, traffic lights. Okay, let's talk aggregate. Really underused function. Let's say I want to sum up these things. So Alt equals, it highlights those, but because there's an NA, you get an NA result. Now maybe I don't want that. So the aggregate function, you can average, count, max, min. Number 9 is sum, so there's number 9. Okay, what do I want to do? This is the cool bit. Aggregate can ignore rows, it can ignore nothing, it can ignore error values. Perfect. Number 6. Then I just want to highlight what I want to add up. So I'm going to sum and ignore the errors. There we go, 30. Often it's safer to have your grand total error out, but if you know you want to handle it, then aggregate can be your friend in that scenario. You can also do some other funky stuff with aggregates. For example, I've got no filters applied to this table, so I've got a nice green tick. And as soon as I apply a filter, like a B, I get red spooky eyes, or I go an A, or turn off the filters. See, I just get those results there. So how do I do that? Well, it relies on a couple of things. Firstly, equals, I've got a formula that I've written. Okay, so then I count A, which basically counts the number of values, counts the number of items. So count A in that table, and there's 9. Okay, and that doesn't change. There's always 9. Okay, then I've done an aggregate, count A, and I've highlighted the same thing. Okay, but, count aggregate. I've got to put my element in here. Ignore hidden rows, number 5, that's the key. Okay, comma, highlight this. So the number 5 is ignore hidden rows. So if I put a filter on, I now only have 3 visible rows, or 1 visible item. Okay, so much better. So then I can just do an if formula to say if that equals that, do a tick. If it doesn't, do some other symbol. And here's my formula. So if the aggregate 3, 5, which is the count A ignoring hidden rows, equals the normal count A, then give a tick. So that means there's no filters. Otherwise, spooky eyes. And to put the spooky eyes and the tick in, I used Windows key full stop to bring up my emojis. Okay, and these will actually show up in color in Excel Online. So there you go, there's a little trick with aggregate. Okay, I'm going to do one switch example. There's a couple in this file, I'll make this file available, but I'm going to do one switch example. So switch is basically an alternative, and probably a better alternative to nested if statements. So let's have a look at this one. If this is finance, then 100. If it's operations, then 200. If it's HR, then 300. Now that's pretty terrible, to be honest. An XLOOKUP formula or an index match formula would be better, or VLOOKUP in this scenario. Little tip, I've also added a little bit of commentary into my formula using the +n. So n turns any piece of text into a 0. So I'm just adding 0 to the result. So it's a way of adding commentary into your formula. And notice I'm using lots of spaces. That's another little tip. Put spaces in your formula. Put spaces after your brackets so you can see where they end. It's much easier. There's a little tip there. So switch. Okay, switch is easier because you just say grab me the value, and then you don't need all those ifs. You just say, okay, the result pulled from C7, where it's finance, give me 100, where it's operations, give me 200. So it's a simpler to write and read than all these ifs with all the brackets. Okay, so that's the switch. Don't worry about the @ symbol, that's part of the new dynamic arrays in Excel. Okay, so here we go, equals switch, and that's the result. So you can also neaten things up by using Alt-Enter to start new lines. So I could change this and say, right, I want to tidy this up. So switch, Alt-Enter, starts a new line, Alt-Enter, and so on. And with switch, you've also got this option of if no match is found, you can put whatever you want. So if none of these pop up, it'll just say no match. Now that is a bit freaky when people see it in the formula bar up here. And this would be why the formula bar would be nice if it expanded automatically. There are a couple of other examples in here in terms of switch within a text function to swap between whole, decimal and percentages. That's the same formula, but we're getting different formattings. Here's a switch true example. So you can actually do greater thans and less thans and things like this. So I'll make this file available, but I won't run through it now. And here's a little bit of the entire formula explained for both the switch and the switch true. So that will be covered off. Just download this file and take a look at that at your own pace. Okay, TEXTJOIN. Function added a few years ago, pretty awesome. It replaces having to do the old concatenate, or these days concat. this, comma, double quote with a space, this, etc., etc. Double quote, or let me put a comma in there. Let me put a comma in here just so we can actually physically see it. There we go. Comma, and then we click on this. It's all a bit confusing, but there we go. We've got, everything joined together with a comma in between. Text join, way easier. Equals text join. The delimiter, you just set it at the start, so it's going to be a comma between everything. Ignore empty cells, basically pick true. I'll explain what that means in a second. And then you highlight what you want to join together. You could control click, you can highlight a range, whatever you need. And there we go. Right, just easier to write, quicker to write. Also, that ignore empty, let's say I get rid of 1006. The concat way has a double comma where there should have been 1006. The text join has ignored the empty and therefore hasn't put the double comma in. Pretty cool. Text join, really good. You can even do funky stuff like this. Your delimiter could be something a little bit longer. Text join, that's my delimiter, the email extension. Ignore empty, true, and just highlight all these. Okay, put them all together, and I've got a nice list that I can copy and paste into an email. So that is text join. Okay, we are getting towards the end. Grand totals on a stacked column chart. I often get asked about this one. How do I have a nice number showing me my grand total at the top of each bar? Well, you actually do have to add total into your source. Okay, and because it's a table, it's automatically picked it up. If it wasn't, I'd have to click on the chart and resize it. This isn't great though, because it's just doubled up everything. So everything's doubled. The grand total is just the total on top. So the trick is this: right click on one of those bars and change the chart type. Okay, change series chart type. And the total needs to be a line chart. So you click on that, and there it is. That's the line chart. Okay, now we can right click and add data labels. We can then double click on the data labels and say show them above, over on the left, over on the right hand side here. And then the natural thing to do is then try and delete the line, but unfortunately your labels disappear. So don't delete the line. Okay, what you do is you right click on the line and say outline, no outline. And when you do that on the line, it just disappears. And you can format those. So that's how you do stacked numbers on a stacked chart, grand totals. My axis is a bit messy. Okay, that's slanted axis, and they're just the month ends. So let me show you this trick. If I highlight some dates, I'll show you here and then I'll do it on the chart. So highlight those, Control 1 or right click format cells, does the same thing. Custom, and then in here, remember this trick, MM for 09 and MM for September and 4 M's for the full word. Well, guess what happens when you press 5 M's? You get one letter, the initial. September, October, November, December. So let's do that down here. I can click on this, go to number, go down the bottom, 5 M's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oops, 5. Click add. And there we go. Nicely formatted axis on my chart. Perfect. Okay. Validations, drop-down lists. Let's take a look at this. A simple way of doing a validation list is my recommendation would be to turn this into a table first. Okay. The reason being, tables get bigger automatically, and therefore your drop-down list will pick up the new items you add to a drop-down list. But you can't refer to a table from a different sheet in a validation list. So my next tip is this. You highlight your range and you make this something like DD for drop-down list. Okay, press enter. It disappears, but it is actually there, DD list. Okay, and then in some data validation, data validation list, I can then type in equals DD list, click OK, and let me just make sure this is formatted so I can spot where it is. There's my nice list. And if I copy this to any other sheet, it still works. Okay, so that's my tip. If you actually highlight the cells, it'll work on that page. Or if you go to another sheet and highlight those cells, it'll work. But if you add something new, okay, from the other page, it will not pick it up. So you need to have it as a named range. So that's my little advice on that. Okay, you can do more things. You can actually do stuff like, let's say after a certain date, you know, I've got today in here, that somebody can't enter data. So if I try and type something in, it says, sorry, too late. The date of entry has passed. How did I do that? Well, I just go to data validation, and there's my formula. And let me try and zoom in quickly on that one. Today is less than whatever date's in I4. Okay, so that's some sort of date in here. So equals today is less than a cutoff date. And that's you stop people putting stuff in. Unfortunately, any old user can just come and copy a date and paste over the top and wipe out your formatting, which isn't great. Hopefully the Excel team are working on that. Right, dependent drop-downs. Let's talk about dependent drop-downs. Here I've got a little list of different drinks, and that's going to be my main drop-down. So let me just set that up first. So data validation, list. And if you can't remember what you called a list using that name manager, press F3 and it brings up a little list. So F3 brings you up a list of all your names you've set up. So DD drink, click OK, and this is now my first drop down. Now if I pick T, I want table T, the list here, to show. So this is how I've set it up. I said this is my main list and this is the names of the tables for my second lists. Okay, so when I pick tea, I want to be able to pick from these. If I pick coffee, I want to be able to pick from this list. So I've set up these little tables. This one is called, if I go to my table design, table coffee, and so on. So this is the crazy formula you have to write. It's not actually as bad as it looks. Let me show you what it is. So equals, if I say, and I'll do the index match way, the next example I'll show you an easier way using XLOOKUP when everyone's got it, but this way will work on everybody's versions of Excel. So I want to index this column where I get a match for whatever I pick from my T in this column. Okay, comma 0 for an exact match, close the bracket on the match, close the bracket on the index. So that is going to bring me back table T. If I bring back coffee, table coffee. Now the clever thing is this, I don't want the word coffee, I want the table, the actual list here. So you use the indirect function. Okay, you can indirectly bring back that little list. Now in old Excel, when you press enter, you'll get a ref error, but it's not a problem. In new Excel, dynamic array Excel, when you press enter, you actually get the list displaying, which is pretty cool. However, I want this solution to work on all versions of Excel. So all I'm going to do is grab this entire formula, Control C, and then delete it. Okay. What I'm going to do is put that formula in a named range. It's a named formula. So I'm going to go to Formulas, Define Name. I'll call it DD Secondary. I will wipe out whatever's in here. I want to get rid of all that and Control V. So there's my formula inside. And actually, I want to put a $sign in here. I forgot to put a $sign, and really I should name this cell. So let's go F4 to put a $sign in. That locks it then, okay? So it's always going to be this. So here we go. In the secondary, we say data validation list, and it is this secondary list. So F3, DD secondary, okay, and here is my list of coffees. If I change this to T, I then get a list of teas. So using that indirect function wrapped around an index match is how I can get the results. And I would like it to turn red. If somebody picks juice, that's not a valid juice. So I want it to turn red. So here's the little extra touch. You can add a bit of conditional formatting. So if this cell does not exist in this list, sorry, if this value does not exist in the indirect list, turn red. So here we go. We will just go home, conditional formatting, new rule. This is getting a bit techie, I know, but can be pretty useful. Use a formula equals, okay, COUNTIF. Press F3 to bring up your DD secondary. So how many times does, or sometimes that bugs out doing it that way. Let me just cancel. Conditional formatting, new rule. Okay, use formula equals COUNTIF DD secondary, comma, this cell here, M14. Okay, close the bracket, equals 0. So if the number of occurrences of this in the drop-down list is 0, it means it doesn't exist, it's not valid. Format, font go bold and white with a background of red, and click OK. And now if I pick juice, it's not valid. So I come in here, I change this to orange, it is valid. But if I change this to coffee, orange coffee is not valid. But if I change it to cappuccino, it is. Awesome. Okay. XLOOKUP makes this whole thing easier. Let's do this the XLOOKUP way. Equals XLOOKUP. Highlight. Sorry, the primary list is data validation, list. And it's a simple list of these headings. Okay, that's it. Coffee, tea, juice, all in columns now. So there's my primary drop-down list. Okay. Now my secondary I'm going to do in 2 separate cells here just to show you how this works. So I can do equals XLOOKUP coffee in this column. Okay, so it's finding them from that little list, and it's going to bring back the results from the matching column by highlighting the whole table. Close the bracket, enter, and there is my list. Okay, that's pretty cool. Tea, juice. That's it. Now I don't want these zeros showing, so I'm going to do something extra. Equals filter. So the new filter function, I want to filter this list. I'm just going to do the hash to reference the whole column. So that's another little tip with the new dynamic arrays coming. Okay, and I will only want to include it where that list doesn't equal 0. And there's my filtered list. And let's take it one step further. We'll wrap it in a sort. Okay, there's the sort, apple, orange, watermelon. This is now my drop-down list. So I can go data validation, okay, list, and the source is equal to K8 hash. That's the key. You must put the hash to make it reference the whole list. So here we go. There is my orange. And if somebody changes it to coffee or tea, my drop-down list has now changed over here. So it's changed here, green. Beautiful. Okay, we're wrapping things up. Save the best for last. Quick pivot table tricks. So let me jump back to my tables. And I am going to click in here and say design, summarize with pivot table. Always a good idea to have your data as a table, because as new columns and rows and things get added, your pivot table will automatically pick those up when you refresh. Okay, so summarize with pivot table, existing sheet. Let's go and find the existing sheet. We'll go right to the end here and we'll just drop it around about here. Beautiful. So there's my table. And I'm just going to do kilograms into the values. So that's my total kilograms by state. Beautiful. And I want to format it as no decimals. So my tip, right click, don't do format cells. Number format, that's what you should do. That sticks a lot better. So let's go number, thousands, 0 decimals. Okay, so all my numbers have changed. And if you want to change this to the average weight, you can just right click, summarize by count, average, min, max. Yeah, so average, there we have it. So I might want to do some drilling down now into by name. So I'm going to bring in given name underneath here and surname. And this is where people start to get really annoyed with pivot tables and they switch to classic view or they just give up because that looks pretty crazy. Okay. So these are the tips. Under design, you should go to report layout, tabular form. That lays it out in a nice column per thing you've dragged into that row label. And these subtotals freak people out as well. So I don't need those. So subtotals do not show. Right, this is all under the design tab. And then you start thinking that data is missing. So what's this Moran? What's this Cook? They're both got the same name. They're both Andrews. They're both Brandons. Okay, both those people. All these are New South Wales, and it's only when I get down here that I get different NTs. So what you do, report layout tab, under the design ribbon still, repeat all item labels, and it spills it all down. A couple of little tidy ups. I don't want these columns to be bold, so weirdly you tick this row headers. See, that turns the bold on and off. And I don't want those little plus and minus signs showing. So now you do switch to analyze and you toggle off the plus minus buttons. And that's a nice little setup for formatting your tables. Now we've all been hit with sort of, being a bit of a pain. It's not, this, we have to go through these clicks. Also, when you refresh a pivot table, the columns auto resize. Well, let's go to this option. Default pivot table options. You can change them for your future pivot tables. File, options, data, edit default layout. Okay, and in here you can actually click inside a pivot table and import that layout as your default, or you can manually say I do not show subtotals. By default I want it shown in tabular form, and this bit here, pivot table options, you can turn off auto fit. Okay, so it doesn't ever bother you again. Awesome. So there's my little tips on that. And one last one, equals, if we click on a cell, I don't get the get pivot data warning because, okay, my pivot table settings are different. So if you want to change it, you go here, generate get pivot data. That is normally ticked by default. And when you click on something equals, you get that big crazy looking get pivot formula. If you don't want that, you simply click in the pivot table, go pivot table analyze, options, and you untick that little box and you won't get the get pivot data formula anymore. Right, we're very much on time, or just gone over, but I've saved the best for last. Check out this cool little trick. Right click, add a slicer. Here's my blood type. I'm going to change this slicer into a multi-column one. So here we go. And I'll make it a bit taller as well. And we're going to go a little bit taller with the buttons. And also I want to change this. So I want to right click, duplicate that layout, call it my tab layout, change the format to have no border. Okay, none, and click OK. Then I need to assign that. So here we go, it's assigned. So that's now no border. I want to right click, slice, size, sorry, not size and properties, right click, slicer settings, turn off the display header, click OK. And now check this out as I drag this up, go a little bit taller. See how the bottoms disappear subtly? Okay, these now look like tabs, especially if I insert a line and hold shift while I draw it to make it a nice straight line. Okay, move this up, nudge it up a little bit, and now I have nice clickable tabs. It looks like tabs, but it's really a slicer. And one last thing, if I want to blow this out by state, I could put state into the filters panel, and then under the pivot table analyze options, it says show report filter pages. So I've put report state into the report filter. It says, do you want to blow it out on state? Yes, I do. Click OK. And now I have an individual page per state. Awesome. So that wraps it up. Thank you very much for watching. Please follow me on Twitter and connect with me on LinkedIn and watch our YouTube videos for Access Analytic. Hope you found it useful, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks.